Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to check the video out today. We are going to be talking about fishing lipless crankbaits in the fall time of the year. I sort of want to have a deep dive into this, give you some advanced techniques and strategies for catching bass in the fall time of the year on them, because a lot of people don't fish lipless crankbaits in the fall. They think they're more of a spring type lure, pre-spawn, which they work good that time of year, but probably, one of my favorite times to fish them is in October, November. So I'm going to sort of let you guys know what to look for this time of year for your lipless crankbait fishing. I'm also, guys, just a big thank you I wanted to extend to everybody out there. Everybody's been helping to support advanced bass fishing here by subscribing to the channel and using all the links I put in the description. If you guys want to give something back, to the channel for the information that I'm sharing with you guys, if you just use and bookmark my tackle warehouse link in the description of this video for all your tackle purchases. That's a great way to support the channel, because the channel gets a little small percentage of a commission on anything you buy there. So really appreciate that. Okay. Lipless crankbaits in the fall time of the year. This one of the things it doesn't get a lot of traction. You don't hear a lot of YouTube videos about it. You don't read a lot about it. Because it is sort of situational, and I sort of want to go over the situations that it works best in the fall time of the year, and sort of give you guys some of my some of my secrets a little bit for fishing them in the fall time of the year. So let's talk a little bit about the conditions that you have to have, and then I'll get into the baits a little bit. Now, one of the things about fishing for lipless crankbait fish in the fall time of the year, you have to have some specific type of water conditions for this to work. The number one thing that you have to have, and I don't care if you guys are fishing, Lake Hartwell in South Carolina or somewhere in Alabama or whatever. It doesn't matter if the banks you fish are rocky banks, gravelly banks, or clay banks. You got to have flat banks. Flat banks are the number one element involved in catching fish on a lipless crankbait during the fall time of the year, October and November specifically. I think a lot of this has to do with the feeding mood and personality of the bass, because bass use a lot of different bank angles in the fall time of the year based upon the type of lake that you fish, and also based upon the predominant species of bass that are in the lake. If you have a lake that has a lot of a mixed species, say for example you got some spotted bass, you got some largemouth, and you got some smallmouth bass, say you guys fish Lake Cumberland or something, those are generally not the better type of lipless crankbait lakes in the fall time. The best lipless crankbait lakes are the ones that are predominantly largemouth heavy. You can have a few spotted bass or whatever in it, but the vast majority of your bass are going to be largemouth bass. Something like Grand Lake in Oklahoma, or Lake Eufaula in Alabama. Those type of largemouth heavy lakes. So if you got a lake that has a lot of flat banks on it, and have a heavy largemouth population in correlation with the right water visibility, and that right water visibility is sort of that 1 to 3 foot zone, and combined with the right water temperature of 50s, in the 50s or the 60s, or maybe around 70 degrees, you're going to have some good lipless crankbait fishing. So this is perfect. This is like the ideal scenario. Now, it can vary a little bit. I'm just talking about the perfect scenario. It can be to one side, either the other, but largemouth heavy lake, flat banks, water temperatures in the upper mid 50s to around 70 degrees, water visibility of about 1 to 3 feet, and it's going to help also if you have a little bit of wind. You don't have to have a lot of wind, but just a little bit of a breeze. It's going to be really good with that. Okay, the best type of areas on this are going to be your flatter points. Now, if you gave me like a perfect deal, say, Randy, what is the perfect lipless crankbait spot to fish in October and November? Give me a flat rocky point. Now, it can be a flat rock point. It can be rocks as big as my fist. It can be gravel. It can be sand. It can be clay, whatever. But give me some type of a flat main lake or secondary point. That is going to be the ideal scenario, with all the other variables included. The right water, the right water clarity, a little bit of wind. Sunlight conditions don't really matter. I tell you one thing about this, guys, a lipless crankbait is one of the best post-front lures that you can fish with. If you're out there and it's been a decent fall day, and all of a sudden you get one of those really nasty fall cold fronts where temperature drops, 20 degrees and the wind switches out of the north, it's a really good, bait to catch them. I'll give you guys a prime example of what I'm talking about here. I was fishing a tournament down at Lake Martin in Alabama. This was, I believe it was a mid-November type tournament. And I had been doing pretty good in that particular tournament. I was fishing a jig, flipping a jig around isolated wood targets, around docks and that type of stuff. And I was catching a few fish on a spinnerbait here and there. And it was typical prefrontal conditions. We had a south wind, we had a little bit of overcast. And the first day of the tournament, I did pretty good flipping that jig and throwing crankbait and spinnerbait around. The second day of the tournament, we had a bad front come through. I mean, one of those fronts where the temperature dropped 25 or 30 degrees and the wind was blowing, bluebird sky, there wasn't a cloud in the sky, and the wind was blowing about 20 miles an hour out of the north. And I went to my primary areas and went through that, and I couldn't catch anything. It's like I could not get a bite doing anything. So finally, there was a series of about 4 or 5 of these flat, rocky points up in the river arm where I was fishing, and I took a little 1/4 ounce rattle trap. And I started running those wind-blowing, flat, rocky points, and I wound up catching a limit in about 2 hours on the little lipless crankbait. So it's really good in those type of conditions. Okay, so that's the conditions. Let's talk a little bit about the baits as far as colors and size. Now, there's 2 different type. I use a lot of different type of lipless crankbaits, but I sort of want to show you some of my favorites. And also, guys, I'll put my lipless crankbait link and my Tackle Warehouse link in the description if you guys would like to pick some up of the ones I'm talking about. My favorite is the Megabass Vibration X. This is a 3/4 ounce lipless crankbait. This is my favorite color. This is the bluegill pattern here. And for some reason, I catch a lot of fish on a bluegill pattern in the fall time of the year. That's one of my favorites. Just the old 1/2 ounce, old school rattle trap that you can get anywhere. This is another really, really good one. Rattle trap, it's one of those baits that it's held up over time, and it's a cheap bait. The components are cheap, but it still catches a lot of fish. And this Yozuri rattling vibe, I've caught a lot of fish on that. This is actually a custom painted one that I have right here, but these are my 3 favorite ones: is the rattling vibe, rattle trap, and the Megabass Vibration X. Now I'll talk a little bit about what makes me choose each one of these. If the fish are really shallow, say I'm fishing those flatter, rocky points, and those fish the water's dirty. Maybe the water's around 12 inches, 15 inches of visibility, and those fish, those fish in really shallow water. I want the rattle trap because guys, the rattle trap is a better super shallow water lipless crankbait. It's lighter, it doesn't dig down as much. It's a super slow sinker. So if the fish are really, really shallow, rattle trap is a really good choice. If the fish are a little bit deeper, say for example, if they're pulled out off the bank a little bit and they're in maybe that 3 to 5 foot zone, the rattling vibe sinks a lot faster. So if I feel that those fish are a little bit deeper, or if it's really windy, since the rattling vibe casts better, it sinks faster, that's my choice. And then on the Vibration X, if I'm fishing an area that has the flatter type areas that tend to be more clay or sand without the rock on it, for some reason the Vibration X works really good. And also this Vibration X, it's a really good bait to pump. So sometimes, say for example, if I'm out on one of those big flat points and my boat's maybe in 8 or 9 foot of water, and I'm making a long cast to the bank and I'm fan casting it all over that flat point, if that water visibility is a little bit cleaner, like on the 3 foot zone, one of my favorite ways to catch them is to take this Vibration X, throw it out there and fan cast all over the point, throw it out there, let it hit the bottom and pump it off the bottom and let it fall back down, just pump it off the bottom. And I can cover that whole point. And sometimes this Vibration X going to the bottom and then ripped up like that, you can get a reaction strike on those flatter points. I've caught a lot doing that too. Most of the time, guys, I'll fish at, all these baits on anywhere between, say, 12-pound test, Seaguar and Vizix line, up to 20-pound test, depending upon how shallow I'm fishing. If those fish are really shallow and the water's dirty, I may put the rattle trap on 20-pound test fluorocarbon just to keep it shallower. And if I'm fishing the little 1/4 ounce size, it's a lot lighter, I may use it down to 12-pound test. So just depends on that. usually with some type of a, 6'11", 7-foot medium action bait cast rod. But anyway, guys, just a quick little video here. I just wanted to reiterate how effective these lipless crankbaits are on those flatter banks in the fall time of the year. Not a lot of people do it. It's sort of an overlooked technique, but it's one that's produced a lot of good fish for me over the years. So hope it helps you guys as well. We'll see y'all.